Hey, sorry about this, guys. I had to see whether or not something I heard about was legit. And because I can just make a phone call and ask, I did. All right. Which I'll bring that up. And that has nothing to do with what you see on the banner, but because it is such a big deal, I was like, number one, how did I miss this? And number two, get that son of a on the phone, man. This can't be real, but it is. Stay tuned. All right, everybody, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget to like the videos, and if you like them, and share them far and wide. Of course, the best place to follow us is on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, so I didn't upload the video as not to confuse anybody. So, look, that's what it is to be a member on Locals. For YouTube members, I will upload it very shortly, and you will see what we were talking about briefly yesterday, which I will again go over very quickly, because I don't want to cover the same content. And then instead of going over what we did yesterday, which is generally what's going to be on the questionnaire for this quarterly survey, I wanted to talk about the challenges of polling something like tariffs. And I'm noticing pundits and pollsters, especially these DC types, man, they really don't get it. Okay. There is a difference between polling somebody's snap take to a media narrative and conducting legitimate research to find out how people view certain issues. And because, of course, this is the kicker, how it's going to be viewed in the context of persuading them to vote some way, shape, or form. So how will that belief influence how they're going to vote? And which, by the way, which beliefs matter more? The stupid propaganda poll questions, or how they really think about these things and how they think they're going to impact their lives? Okay. And one of these big, like, aha moments I have been telling you about, and I've been telling you about this since the primary, since the Republican primary for president, that I saw this. This was a huge change. This was something that has never happened to me in my career. I've never seen this result in my career. They're just late to the party on actually seeing it. And I think because they're being general in their question formats, they're not understanding, or they didn't catch on how Trump would take advantage of this and how this would benefit Trump going into the 24 election. All right. So before we get to that, however, I mean, I could just lead up with that. I really did, however, want to remind you guys, when we talk about things like the consumer price index and we talk about things like the producer price index, even anything related to inflation, and even the jobs report in some respect, much of these are lagging indicators. Meanwhile, you cannot get the numbers that these people release unless you're talking about how people felt about the month before. All right. In other words, they're not going to lead. The polls and how people feel about certain things, that's going to follow this stuff, because the voters always know. They feel it and they know first. All right, let me put it that way. So an index, for instance, like the Registered Voter Economic Confidence Index, which will be in this poll, and I cannot wait. If we're going to do quarterly, they're going to be in everyone. And I cannot wait to see what those readings are, because something tells me that our index is more comprehensive. That's number one. And we're going to get to the bottom of certain things that, for, let's say, the University of Michigan Survey of Consumers Index cannot get to the bottom of. Even the conference boards, even though we're modeled after the conference board's Economic Confidence Index, they're not, I want to say, just simply doing it properly. They're just not. They've been doing it a long time. It's done by Nielsen. They're very good. However, they're not doing it in the context of what that means for politics. We are. And we're also isolating it only to registered voters. That's why it's called the RV, the Registered Voter Economic Confidence Index. Does it really matter how all adults feel? I don't know. All adults can't vote. So when we care about what economic confidence or the perception of economic conditions are, we are more concerned with those who can actually cast a ballot. Even though, in case you haven't seen, apparently there are a lot of BS ballots in Michigan again as well. That's a whole other separate topic, though. And he still won. So it's like a miracle. It's a miracle, and you have to be extremely popular in order to swamp the system in all its forms. And you have to be a political force. Otherwise, you will fall prey to it. All right, let's get to the producer price index. But real quick, the CPI, for those who don't know, which is the consumer price index, is our measure of inflation. It has understated inflation for many, many, many years. It's a long-standing criticism of the CPI, is that it does not get all inflation in the index. So, and also the way it's calculated, it doesn't truly reflect how much prices have gone up on working Americans throughout, especially the modern era. Okay. In other words, inflation is worse than we think, or has been for many, many years. And if they told us the truth, it would be horrifying. However, before we get into the PPI, yesterday, the CPI, which was expected to gain a hair, about a tenth of a point, which would already have been a decline because the month before was a decline in the rate of increase. And that is what happens most months. Inflation does not fall. It doesn't decline. All right. What happens in most months is the rate at which it's rising will either go up or down. And it was a good sign to see it go down. We haven't seen inflation actually fall since COVID, the shutdown, the lockdown. And that was because of an artificial shutdown by the federal government imposed on commerce in this country. The data was grossly distorted. We can't even really trust it. The Bureau of Labor Statistics themselves, same thing with the Bureau of Economic Analysis. They are the same in that they say, look, the data is distorted and it is what it is. Take it with a grain. Before that, you have to go back before the Great Recession, I believe, to see both of these indexes do what they did. And it is together. And it is not common. And what happened was that 1/10 increase that was expected on the consensus, down from 1/3 of a tenth, actually came in as a negative reading, which means inflation for you and me, if you're an average consumer, inflation for consumers actually fell. Meaning the cost of goods actually declined, and specifically, gasoline cratered, which is you paying at the pump to fill your tank. Now, I did kind of hint yesterday in the video that, like, expect, based on some of what I saw in the CPI, not everything, but a lot of what we read and went over did indicate to me that the PPI would also come in better than expected. And it in fact did. And actually, do I have the forecast? I do. Okay. I do. Okay. We'll show you what it is first. We'll go over the actual report and then we'll compare it to the forecast, because this was even more dramatic. The difference between the CPI and the PPI is simple. The consumer price index is inflation for you and me as a consumer. The producer price index could be for you as well, is from the seller's point of view. Simple. All right. The producers themselves who then sell their goods, are they seeing an increase or a decrease? And if the PPI is down, theoretically, if the PPI is down, you would expect it to trickle down. I know I'm going to trigger you people on the left. You would expect it to trickle down and prices to continue to go down. Now, what I saw in the CPI, I looked back at the prior PPI yesterday when we were doing the show. And that's why I said that, because it looked to me that the CPI from that month made sense if you went back and you looked at the producer price index the month before. This is a good sign that this happened, because it tells us that this may not be a one-off or a one-month blip in the CPI, which fell 0.1%. It may not be a blip. This may be something that's starting to work itself into the system. Whether it's short-term, I don't know. But the bottom line is, it is a major sign. Last month, the month prior, just to give you guys some context before we show it, the PPI was flat. Okay? Even though the CPI came in at 0.1, the month prior, it was 0.2. I mean, I'm sorry, negative 0.1. Oh my God. But the prior month was, in fact, 0.2. So I'm looking at what the CPI came in, and I'm thinking, I think this is likely to continue, and that we may get a similar reading for the producer price index, which here is the chart. Okay. The red line is the total. I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you guys in a second what's what here. Right? I can do that right on this one. I sure can. All right. I'm going to show you what's what on it. And then the bad news today was the consumer sentiment index. And that's kind of my point. If you look at the National Federation of Independent Businesses and you look at the Small Business Optimism Survey, which we did earlier in the week, when you look at all of these other lagging indicators like the PPI and the CPI, right? There isn't fear being injected by economic data. All right. Reported economic data. Fear is hurting sentiment, at least in these indexes. I can't wait to see what we find, but we're not there yet. Share the public polling project. We'll get there as fast as we can. Not only that, but it's Wall Street and it's their friends in the media, and their panic and their hysteria, they are leading to fears in those indexes. Because if you go to the National Federation of Independent Businesses, you're not going to see tariff concerns at the top of their list. And I would point this out for the Consumer Sentiment Index. Richard Curtin was kind of shady during the last Trump administration. I'm just going to say it. Even before Trump levied any taxes, he plunged the Consumer Sentiment Index, the Consumer Sentiment, it's really called the Survey of Consumers. He plunged it. And the first comment he wrote in his press release that month was, consumers are super afraid over tariffs. When we were actually polling, and nobody mentioned tariffs. They are injecting this fear. Wall Street does not want tariffs on other nations. They don't. They like the status quo the way it is. They're making a fortune with that status quo. They want cheaper goods at home. They don't care if you have a job or not. They don't care if your husband has a job or not. They don't care if your wife has a job or not. They don't care if your kids get a job when they get out of school. They don't care at all. They work in the professional class. They're the credentialed class, and they want cheap shit as much as they could do, because the rest of their money they blow irresponsibly. They want cheap stuff. They are pumping this fear out because every time a market collapses, believe me, Jamie Dimon is making millions. JP Morgan is making millions. It was in JP Morgan's interest to put out that report saying how badly tariffs would impact the not only U.S. economy, but the global economy. Meanwhile, in the real world, because tariffs are a tax, right? Inflation's going to go high. In the real world, businesses are not actually citing that, not small businesses. And the producers are not saying that this stuff is reflected yet, even with all the hysteria. In other words, it just did not happen. Not yet. And I expected it to, and I still kind of do expect it to, even though Trump pulled back on the other nations and is isolating China. And the reason why is a fewfold. One, we still get a lot from China. That's the entire point of Trump's tariff strategy. So that doesn't happen anymore. He's trying to reform our economy so it can sustain itself in the long term. Whether you like Donald Trump or not, you can't argue that that is what he is trying to do. This economy is not sustainable, and it's certainly not it's not beneficial to us as a political body, an entity, as a country, because so many people are being left out of this system. So this can't continue forever, where a very small group of people are making money off it hand over foot, and the rest of us just get the shaft. That leads to social instability. So Trump is trying to make it so we have a bit of flavor like we used to have in this country, where it wasn't just a select group of people who decide that they can have a life, that they can pursue the American dream. Everybody can do that. We have to become a goods-producing economy again. If we do not, we will fail. It's going to happen. By the way, all financial centers fail, even though the kings of those sectors just rotate themselves in and out like they're playing musical chairs. But they make more money when shit goes to hell than they do when things are level. So they want this instability. They want this uncertainty. And they don't care if the federal government defaults on its debt. They're going to buy. It's a buying opportunity. Crashing markets is a buying opportunity for these people. They don't care. And it's something really, I'm sure many of you in the audience know that. But for those of you who do not, you better start to understand that. They love when the market crashes. Love it. Because only you, Johnny Sucker or Jill Sucker, Jack and Diane, only you are the ones who are panicking and selling your shit. They're not. They're buying. Okay. Let's get rid of the less food, energy, and trade. All right. Look at that. That's just absolutely beautiful, frankly. But you can see that it hasn't happened very much, except for under Trump last time. There was a short little blip back in 2023. But for the most part, you have to go back to the recession to see both of these indexes negative like this. And again, negative means that actually inflation fell. And I'm over here showing you this, but you actually can't see what the hell happened here. All right, so let's go back. All right, the producer price index for final demand decreased 0.4% in March. Seasonally adjusted, the US BLA reported today. Final demand prices increased 0.1 in February and 0.6 in January. So again, you can see the tables since Trump took over. You can see a decline in the PPI, and now we're down here. On an unadjusted basis, the index for final demand advanced 2.7 for the 12 months ending in March. We saw this with the CPI as well. We're looking at that 12 months, and we're seeing in the last couple of months, you have seen it taper off as the older months and their larger values fall out of the 12-month average. Prices for final demands, less food, energy, and trade services edged up 0.1% in March after increasing 0.4% in each of the previous 3 months. For the 12 months ended in March, the index for final demand came in at 3.4%. That goes to show you how high it was before. All right. Final demands for goods moved down 0.9%. That is the largest decrease, which we saw a 1.4% fall in October of 2023. But you may remember that prices, producer and consumer, they were out astronomical before that. And we needed large declines because inflation was running away. So I'm more impressed by this slow and steady hopefully trend. I wouldn't call it a trend yet, but these are very, very positive signs that inflation is easing. I wouldn't call it a trend yet. But before, inflation was crazy, guys. Crazy. So we needed that 1.4. We needed some way outside of the historical consensus and average. We needed that badly to get things to a point where everyone wasn't in so much pain. Over three-fourths of the March decline is attributable to a 4% drop in energy. Under Joe Biden, of course, energy was going crazy. The first thing he did when he came into office was be the anti-Trump or the un-Trump. Canceled the Keystone Pipeline, began to issue out exemptions again to other countries so that they, including China, so that they may buy oil from Iran. What does that matter? Well, because they're not going to buy ours, right? Prices for final demand for foods decreased 2.1%. In contrast, that the final demand for goods, less food and energy, actually ticked up 0.3%. So food and energy. I mean, we could start tackling some of the other stuff later, folks, but that's a hell of a good start. Considering you saw us running poll after poll after poll about whether or not people could find food in grocery stores, and if they could they afford it? And if they could, did they see a noticeable price increase? Those numbers were coming in the 70s, 80s. Do you remember that? That was a seriously difficult situation. All right. So I'm happy starting with gas and food. Gas in the grocery store, baby. That's where we're going to most often. Prices, conversely, for steel mill products did rise 7.1. Final demand for services overall fell 0.2 in March. That's the largest decline since the same decline in July of 24. And leading that was a margins for final demand and trade services, which dropped 0.7%. Trade index measure changes in margins received by wholesalers and retailers. Prices for final demand, transportation, and warehousing also moved down 0.6. The index for final demand services, less trade, transportation, and warehousing ticked up 0.1. All right, so we can get on with that. But that's a big deal. And I don't know about you, but I'm super happy with all this. Frankly, I am super happy with all this. Whoops. Actually, we can just stop that, kill that. And let's show you what the consensus was. I hate it with that. Some kind of an update. Every time I go to share another screen, it's like, do you want to do Google Faces? And so when I make a motion like this or something, is it going to work? I think I turned it off. It makes a bubble. It will make a thumbs up, right? Or if I go like this, it'll show an idea over my head. I mean, which is kind of funny and kind of cool, but it's also not for the show, right? It was happening for a while, and I'm like, this has got to get turned off. All right, as long as it is, because it looks like it is. All right, here is the Econo Day consensus. You guys know I love me some Econo Day. 0.2%. Positive 0.2%, meaning a gain. The consensus forecast ranged from a low of 0.1, which was negative 0.1 on the low end of that forecast range, to a high of 0.5. Month over month, folks, month over month. Year over year, the low was 3.1, the high was 3.4. Of course, we can see that both of them beat the low end of the forecast, which means, of course, it beat the consensus. Consensus for the month over month was 0.1. It came in at negative 0.4. Minus food and energy, it was 0.1. It came in at negative 0.1. And probably even more interesting, given everything that's going on with trade services. Minus food, energy, and trade services, the consensus was actually 0.4, which would have been a 0.2 increase from 0.2. But it wasn't. It came in at a much, much cooler 0.1. Final demand for foods, month over month. Look at that. Prior was 0.3, negative 0.9. Wow. It's good. It's good news. It's really good news, folks. And it's already 228. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Okay, so why am I showing you this? All right. I am adamant that media and Wall Street are causing certain concerns to be in not just the business community, everywhere. The electorate, which is honestly what we're really focusing on here, right? It's not, nothing is like, they're being told that inflation's going to explode on you. That they have been told this for 2 months now. Because people are like, well, Rich, he didn't do the tariffs yet. Okay, but they've been told for 2 months that the tariffs are going to lead to higher inflation. Sentiment was reflecting that. A decline in consumer sentiment was reflecting that. Meanwhile, over that very period, inflation was actually falling. So when I say like the media is the enemy in the American public, you've heard Trump say it, and I got to tell you, I agree with it. Not only that, but it's like textbook definition of an enemy. What's an enemy? Are they looking out for you? Here, inflation is falling, and they're trying to panic everybody. Panic investors, Wall Street. They can panic themselves really good. But again, they're doing that on purpose. They want you to panic. Adam Schiff put out a statement saying that he wants answers from the White House on whether or not Don Jr. or anyone in the Trump family profited off of insider trading because of these tariffs. That's projection if I've ever heard it. Look who funds Adam Schiff. Who profited off of this panic and fear-mongering in the markets? People like Adam Schiff. People like his donors. They profited the most. Democrats are no longer the party, and I love to use this analogy. Wall Street, the original, not the Shia LaBeouf remake. Wall Street. Charlie Sheen. Right? Michael Douglas. Gordon Gekko. Greed is good. Right? The dad, Charlie Sheen's father in that, who is his real dad, by the way, Martin Sheen, represents, he's the union rep. He is the mouth, I don't want to say mouthpiece. He is the voice of the unions in the airline industry that particular union that deals with Blue Star. They're all Democrats. In the movie, Charlie Sheen is effectively hanging out with a bunch of hoity-toity, silk-stocking, Wall Street, yuppie Republicans from the 80s. That's who he's chilling with, and that's who he wants to be. It was Martin Sheen, who was trying to look out for the little guy, the working class, because that was the politics of that day. But that is simply no longer the case. With the exception of if, there are Republicans who get money from, don't get me wrong, because the Republican Party's got too many, and I know, don't jump on me for this. Don't you jump on me for this. They have too many Richard Burrs and Tom Tillises and Lisa Murkowski's and Susan Collinses and Lindsey Graham's and et cetera, et cetera. They have too many of those and not enough Gretchen Whitmer types. Oh, I said it. That's what the platform is for MAGA. The old Republican and Democrat area of agreement, plus the Democrats, what used to be, the Democratic, it was pretentious. Don't get me wrong. It was, let me make this clear. It was BS. I'm not saying it's legitimate. I'm saying they made the arguments that they were the party of the working men and women and their families. And many, many people believe those arguments. That's why they won elections. Bill Clinton, I feel your pain. That is not the case anymore. And the party's not evolving. But for the most part, when we see a presidential election, we can absolutely see where the lines are drawn. Wall Street supported Hillary Clinton 3-1. Wall Street supported Joe Biden nearly 6-1. Wall Street supported Kamala Harris over 6-1. If you go back, which we did, we had a chart for this for many years, and you look at who's funding who, even though Republicans, many of them still take money from Wall Street in the era of Trump, especially starting with 2018, because that's when we're dealing with a rapid change in Congress, who they're backing for Congress. You can see the money from Wall Street, and Wall Street typically hedges, so they like to give to both, but they will favor one over the other. It is not even a hedging strategy anymore. Wall Street is the party of the Democratic Party. Wall Street is, or I should say the Democratic Party is, the party of Wall Street. And Republicans are not. Or at least MAGA Republicans are not. And people are starting to figure that out. I think it was in March, before the presidential primary began to get real heated and underway, I told you, hey, we asked the old, who do you think cares more about me question. And Trump is romping everybody. Romping. That was exclusively due, and apparently still is. Bear with me, we're going to see a clip. That is almost exclusively due to the working class changing allegiance. So when working class, non-college are asked, who cares more about you? They have now switched and they are choosing Republicans to the point where it's tied. If you ask it about Trump, he'll do even better than Republicans. Don't believe me? Let's take Leave It to Beaver's word for it as well.
This, to me, is one of the most shocking pieces of poll data that I truthfully have seen this year, or maybe in any prior year.
Really?
Yes, really, because I want you to take a look. Cares more about the needs for people like you. You mentioned the Cape Ball. We got a tie, even after this tariff war had already started, split between Democrats and Republicans on how people feel. Which party cares more for needs of people like you? And why is that so surprising? Because I want you to take a look at prior years. Democrats always lead on this question. Back in 2017, before the 2018 midterms, 13-point lead. 2005, a 23-point lead for Democrats. 1994, which was a big Republican year, a 19-point lead for Democrats. And now, all of a sudden, a tie? All of a sudden, the Democrats, who are the party of the...
All of a sudden, Democrats, who are the
people.
Party of the people. Was it all of a sudden, though? Was it really? Maybe it's all of a sudden for the parties more, and maybe I'll even give him that. But the truth is, the American public was well aware of Donald Trump's feelings on tariffs and what he thinks they are appropriately used for. We had an election. They elected him. Tariffs are actually popular in the Midwest more so than anywhere else. But it's not really out of nowhere. It's not. So I just wanted to stop him there. But it's really not. It's just that it was more specific to Trump.
No more. No more. We get a tie on this question, on a question that has traditionally overwhelmingly been a Democratic advantage. Which party cares more for the needs of people like you? It's truly something I would not have expected to see, especially after this tariff war had begun.
Where does it show that Republicans are making the most gains?
Yeah, again, you talk about party of the people. Look at this. Cares for the needs of people like yourself. Look here. We got non-college. We got those with a college degree. Among those with a college degree, it's the same score.
All right. Exactly. I just want to point something out. Those who have a college degree have not budged. So this mass exodus continues headline is nuts. That's just simply not true. And oh, by the way, Donald Trump did better with people who have a college degree than anyone expected him to. And certainly better than some of the polls that showed him getting clobbered by 35 points. That didn't happen. Why does this matter anyway? Well, this is one of those issues, like I said before, that really do impact how someone's going to vote. If they go into the ballot box and they're like a squishy Democrat and they hear Trump's message, it is apparently about 14% likely in the likelihood's about 14%. Or actually, it's more. I'm sorry, that's not true. That's not correct. 14%, for instance, of Democratic men in the state of Pennsylvania told us that they were voting for Trump, and in fact did, more so, I think, than people imagined. If you're going into that booth and you really don't know, but all you do know is that, you know, these people are going to look out for you, then if it's close in someone's mind, is it that much of a stretch to say, well, of course they're going to go with them? And that's what was happening with Trump. So the college graduates haven't really moved. The non-college is now plus 19 after just being plus 7 in 2017, as he points out. Plus 9, not 19. It's plus 18 for college, plus 9 for non-college for Republicans. And you may say, well, how is it even then? Because I will remind you, especially in the battleground states, this is why Trump's strength was always going to be stronger in the battleground states. Especially the Midwest. That's because there are more non-college grads than there are college grads. You guys outnumber us. I am a college grad myself. But those of you out there who are not, you outnumber us. In states like Michigan, it's more like 65-35. In states like PA, it's like 60-40. I'm not saying that's going to be the case forever, but I'm saying that's the way it is right now. All right, let's play the rest of Harry Anthony.
Plus 18 points for Democrats in 2017, plus 18 points for Democrats now. But look among non-college voters. Look here. It was plus 7 for Democrats in 2017, and now Republicans an overwhelmingly gain, plus 9 points. That is, the gains have been concentrated, at least within the last decade, among voters without a college degree, the working class. That is where Republicans have gained even since the beginning of the Donald Trump administration. The Democratic base is now those with a college degree. Among the working class, those without a college degree, Republicans have overwhelmingly gained on this all-important question of which party cares more for people like yourself.
Your reference points.
So I'll let him finish it. I just want to point this out, that yes, it is true that it did start even before Donald Trump, but it was negligible, and they weren't getting anywhere near this. So the acceleration of the trend, I would say, absolutely is due to Donald Trump. It is. And in fact, you can see 2017. What was the deal in 2017? He just won the presidency.
Are, as you were pointing out, just before a midterm election. So obviously, let's kind of look at that. Where do things stand for the fight for Congress?
Right. Okay. So you have this question, right? And then there's the question, ultimately, are Republicans going to get punished in this midterm election, in part because that's normally what happens, the party in power gets punished, but also because of this tariff war. And I want you to take a look here at the generic congressional ballot. Where we were in April of 2017, Democrats were already ahead by 7 points. In November of 2024 on this question, it was a tie, and then, of course, Republicans won control. Where are we now? It's Democrats, but just by a point. This looks very much still like what we saw in 2024, not like what we saw in 2017. If Democrats think they automatically have a ticket back to control of the House, I'd say, hold on a second, Republicans still have a real shot at this, despite all of Trump's theatrics over the last month with this tariff war.
All right, theatrics over this month with this tariff. He's got to say, oh, despite all the theatrics, he just can't help himself. Just read the freaking data, Harry. Just read the data. That's it. All right, it's 2:41. I guess I kind of blasted past what I was going to do for a short break. It is what it is. Who cares? I do want to get to your questions, too. All right. So there it is. In other words, and this is even with Republicans going against Trump like they did in the Senate and casting a meaningless vote to try to say you don't have the authority to issue tariffs, which he does. It's just so ridiculous. I suppose an act of Congress could if he signed it himself, but a 51 vote, show vote is nothing. With 3 Republicans, I believe, that joined. 3 Republicans that joined on, I believe it was. Something like that, guys. Right? In any event, the bottom line is, I don't know. I don't know how much to say about that generic ballot. We haven't done one. We will be doing one with this specific poll, but we'll just have to wait and find out. We were a little bit too democratic over in 2024. All right. We were pretty much right on the money in 2022, right on the money in 2020. But in 24, we were a little bit too Democratic, but it did foreshadow that Republicans were going to struggle with groups that Trump was doing well with. All right. All right. I'm going to. How long is this? Hold on one second. Because instead of taking a break, which we're supposed to do, I'm going to play a video. And no, leave that for last. Let's just take a let's take the break off the table and just roll through it. All right, because I want to make sure we get to the questions. All right, so this let me wrap it up with this. This goes to show you how difficult it is to get to the core of whether or not people really do support tariffs or what they feel about tariffs. People don't want to pay anything extra, they don't. I mean, knee-jerk reaction, they don't want to do that. And that's because wage growth did not keep up with the pace or the rise of inflation under Joe Biden. So he would like to, while he has them, get some decent wage numbers while he has them and do this now. I would just say, when you're polling people on these issues, went back and looked at all the various ways that we did it, we were always trying to get to the heart of whether or not they do support the overall strategy, regardless of what they tell a pollster on the initial question. So, do you support or oppose tariffs? Well, with everything that's going on right now, first of all, too few people even know the impact or what they're doing. All they're getting it from is the media. So that was obviously front loaded by Reuters so they could get that. Because if you drill down, like we went over earlier the week, if you drill down into those numbers and the questions, you will find the same thing that I found. People are willing to take short-term pain if it's going to help us in the long run. People do support the use of tariffs, especially in the Midwest, as a strategy in a negotiation with another country, whether it's economic or what. I mean, obviously it's always going to be economic because it's tariff, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is people are not as dumb as some of these pollsters and pundits think they are. And just simply saying that in the height of this moment where there's all these, talk about theatrics, Harry. Look at your network. It's filled with theatrics. The network you work for has been hysterical every day since Donald Trump came down the damn escalator, and you have the nerve to bring up theatrics? Give me a break. All right. Yeah, I'll play it, then we'll get to the questions. Sound like a plan? All right, cool. Don't forget, because this is technically a break, so I'm going to run through my spiel. If you like the videos, don't forget to like them. Share them far and wide. By the way, Jack Posobiec is filling in for Steve Bannon on War Room later today. I did tell him that I'd give him a couple of minutes, starting at 5. So check it out if you want to see it. But I imagine he's going to ask me the same thing I'm going to go over with you right now, which is that people do really like the outcome of it. They like the outcome. They may not like it if you just throw it and lob it in their lap, but they like the outcome of what the strategy is aiming to do. And it's not the People's Pundit, it's Reuters who found that a majority are okay with it as long as you achieve your goals. Which, of course, is to get a better deal in the future, to get more industry employing people in this country. So, again, all right, there's a lot, several on YouTube. All right, yeah, let's play this clip. When we come back, we'll get to your questions.
All right, we're back with another update on cutting wasteful spending here at DOD, and this one is, as they say, a big one. This is a big day. We're signing a memo right now directing the termination of $5.1 billion in DOD contracts. Not million, that's with a B. $5.1 billion in DOD contracts for ancillary things like consulting and other non-essential services. So here's a few examples. DHA contracts for consulting services from Accenture, Deloitte, Booz Allen, and other firms. They're going to save the department $1.8 billion. How about a software reseller contract for enterprise cloud IT services, saving the department $1.4 billion. A $500 million Navy contract for business process consulting. Again, process, lots of consultant for administrative offices in the Bureau of Medicine. By the way, we need this money to spend on better health care for our warfighters and their families instead of $500 an hour business process consultant. That's a lot of consulting. How about this? A DARPA contract for IT help desk services that are completely duplicative with services already provided by our DISA workforce, saving the department another $500 million. We're also terminating, on the DEI front, 11 more contracts for DEI, climate, COVID-19 response, and related non-essential activities across the department. We are committed to rooting out DEI, root and branch throughout this department, and we found 11 more contracts, and we're going to keep looking. So that's $5.1 billion in DoD contracts we're getting rid of. On top of that, in support of the president's priorities to stop federal funding for academic institutions that tolerate anti-Semitism and support divisive DEI programs, this week DoD is also pausing over $500 million in funding to Northwestern University and Cornell University, and that's on top of the $70 million in funding we've already paused at Columbia, Penn, Brown, and Princeton over the last few weeks, as if any of these institutions need more government money at all. So for your keeping score at home, today's cuts bring our running total to nearly $6 billion in wasteful spending over the first 6 weeks of the DoD DOGE effort here at the Defense Department. Their job is to go out and find the stuff that we can get rid of and then drive back into warfighting capabilities here at the Defense Department. So we want to thank our friends at DOGE. We want to thank all the folks here that have helped us unpack this, reveal it, and we're excited to make these cuts on behalf of you, the taxpayer, and the warfighters here at the department. Thanks. Billion in
Curtin retired over at the University of Michigan. So when I give this answer to this question, okay, keep that in mind. All right. It is D. Wong over on Locals. And thanks, Elon. Some people are pointing out in the latest U of Michigan number, the one-year inflation expectation for Republicans and independents are going back up because of concerns about trade policy. Does the administration need better messaging? Feels like Trump is out of touch with his constituents. It does. It keeps friggin' muting me, Elon. Yeah, you notice that? It's pissing me off. Honestly. I don't know what they did here, but that keeps happening. By the way, when I go on War Room later, because I'm using this, it's going to not recognize my microphone. I'm going to have to do it all over again. All right. So if I switch between Zoom and Skype, it does the same thing. It never was like that. I don't know what's going on. I would say this. Again, I'm very skeptical over University of Michigan stuff. I just am. I saw stuff during the first Trump administration I did not like. But that being said, I don't think it's any secret that I think the White House's messaging is not good. I just don't. I think it's not only that they need to do more and talk different. Everyone's views, and this is what's hurting them with Republicans, even certain Republicans. They don't seem to understand that the world changes. All right. The tariff talk, as somebody on our Locals book club, by the way, you should join it, pointed out, it's ancient history. It's ancient history. They're talking like this is still the Bush administration. They use the same frame. It's the Overton window. It is. And it's going to hurt if it's not shifted. It's going to hurt when you do things like this. I just think that, I don't know. We got to do our own poll. We'll see. We'll be able to see right away whether or not we think all of this tariff panic is, in fact, seeping into sentiment or not. Then again, just keep in mind that the last quarter, we were at an all-time high. So don't expect, it was like riding in the Trump honeymoon, and that thing boomed. All right. So keep that in mind. We'll compare it to more like the levels we saw during the Biden administration. All right. Maybe not the worst of it, but normal levels. I don't think he's out of touch. I just think kind of maybe. I think that there is a big element to the Republican Party now that is younger, and they are not understanding things because this isn't the world that they live in. They're still talking about a world that existed 20 years ago. And now I'm not saying everybody, because that's not true, but they need to do a better job. Don't ever stop calling Harry Leave It to Beaver. I mean, he knows the way the Beaver's being. Oh, I can't say that. Wouldn't you know, Wally? Holy smoke, Batman. And I don't mean the cool Batman. I mean the one that's running around in gray tights and shit from the 70s. Unbelievable. All right. So question regarding Trump's pause on the tariffs and the narrative that he backed down. From a vantage point, it looks like he mostly left in place the basic 10% coverage, or he did, which Wall Street would have flipped out over anyway, yes, and kept the focus squarely on China, which doesn't seem like a back down at all. It's not a back down. It's textbook, as you're about to point out, Dan, art of the deal stuff. This stuff really does piss me off when it comes to certain pundits and polls. Seth Levy, these hiccups are killing me. As I retweeted this morning, his tweet, he gets it. First of all, if your starting argument, if your starting argument is that you know the situation better than them, right? You know it better than Bassett, you know it better than Trump, then you've already lost that argument, because you don't. And you certainly don't know how negotiations work. Trump is a transactional guy, and he's always trying to isolate. He will hit you first with a behemoth that throws you off guard and scares the dog shit out of you. And then he will settle back down to where he's really trying to be, which is make it more fair with everybody else, but isolate China. That was always the goal, Dan. Trust me. And these people I always find don't have anybody they could call in the inner circle. They don't know anybody. They have no idea what the president's thinking. All they know are the public comments that he makes. And the public comments he makes are designed to carry out his strategy. And they act like he's stupid or something. This is not a stupid man. All right. You can think whatever you want of him, but he is not a dummy. He knows exactly what he's doing. And this was the correct move. I'm glad Mark Levin and company had an epiphany and they get it now, but don't pretend like for 6 weeks they weren't going on and on about tariffs are attacks. Trump's going to sink the economy. You obviously don't know Donald Trump at all. At all. Aside from having him on your Sunday show, a couple times on your radio show. You don't really know him. You don't get him. This is textbook art of the deal. Absolutely. How is this anything else but a major win for those of us who voted for these tariffs? It's not. It's a huge win for you, Dan. A huge win. You have the left and their talking heads that would, and Republicans would probably do the same, phrase it as a back down or a blink, right? Because they have no other choice but to. Right? And they're going to take cheap shots instead of put the interest of the country first. That's just who they are, and that's what they're going to do. Should really be upset over the people who are supposedly on the right, who have known, number one, about Trump for years, and the voters knew exactly what they were going to get. Exactly what they were going to get. They're not surprised at this at all. All right. Son of a Mitch. What will these trade deals look like once they start negotiating and details come out? What are some must-haves that you would insist on the countries like Japan, Korea, South Korea, Vietnam, India, and EU? That's a whole damn show, I'll tell you. And maybe we should do it. Because over under 5 years, the EU is gone. I don't think the EU survives on economic reordering. It can't, because ultimately it's subjected to something called the bicycle theory. All right. That's why the EU is always flawed. And people that pointed out that it would collapse were right. And they pointed this out back years ago when they wanted to make this economic system. All right. This economic cooperation zone. All right. You can't survive in a system like the EU unless you are continuously adding new nations. It's very much like a person on a bicycle. You cannot stay upright and continue to ride the bicycle if you stop pedaling. If you don't continue to pedal, you're done. It's done. That is what the EU is. It's a bicycle theory. All right. So it is finished. Each of those countries a little bit different. And Peter Navarro, I just didn't roll the whole clip. He did a really good job explaining this and why that is the case. All right. Man, it's already 3:00. My God, really? But to get to some of those, what would they look like? Look, I think what Dan just explained as far as the actual policy is what the goal was. But I would say, what does everything look like when it's done? Is that China is not going to get such a competitive advantage that it comes at the expense of our industry. And that's what's going on. Our industry has been hollowed out. He wants to get our industry back. All right. So we are more of a goods producing economy than a service sector economy. You said a lot about Hamas and Iran recently, and I've seen people who I respect, Mate, Jimmy Dore so funny, Glenn Greenwald, gnashed their teeth about Israel and a genocide when it was Hamas who played the war crime roulette. This is going to go hand in hand with another question. This is another thing that's being spoken about as if it's still like the 1990s or 2000s. I have been talking about it in the way that, that it's relevant to our discussion because it's true. The fact is, Joe Biden doing that funded Iran, who then funds Hamas, and there would never have been a terror attack in Israel if they didn't do that. I mean, look, I don't really care what settlement Israel is building. It still does not warrant that response. It just doesn't. However, let me jump ahead a few and ask, read another question, because I do think there is another side to this that you guys should know. All right. What did you think of the recent Pew Research poll that found that Republicans 18 to 49, who are men, have an unfavorable view toward Israel now, which has risen to nearly, or is it 50? Well, Pew is Pew. They did have Harris win in the election. She lost. Okay. So remember that. But I do think they're probably onto something. Because the Republican Party is getting so many younger people, and you're saying it right there, 18 to 49, that's an awful large age bracket. I wish Pew would have broke that down more. That tells me they're concerned about their sample size in some subgroup. So they're making large regroupings. And I suspect it's the 18 to 24, the 18 to 29. I suspect it is because they are the hardest. And because they are part of the Republican Party, the Republicans are going to have to learn, many of them now, many new ones are, Republicans are going to have to learn how to speak to them, because this old messaging and the old way that they phrase things, it doesn't apply to the world that they are living in now. It doesn't. Maybe it still makes sense to you, but it doesn't apply to their world and their experiences and things they hear. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. I really wouldn't. I think many, too, are at a position, especially younger Republican men. They're at a point where they just don't want to hear about war anymore. They don't like images of dead kids. They don't care whether they're Jews or they're Arabs. They don't care. They don't want to see it. And they're more concerned about themselves. Like, wait a minute. And I get it. I would support giving Israel the Iron Dome funding. It's useful. It's proof of concept we're way beyond. However, I mean, these people are struggling, especially the younger in that group. And they see all this money go to Israel, to Ukraine, to what? And they're like, listen, what about me? This has been going on forever. This is never going to stop. What about me? It's good 2 questions that went hand in hand. If these positive numbers continue, what do you think the media spin for the midterms will be? Ooh. People are stupid, number 1. They always do that. Every time Democrats lose is because somebody is stupid. Somebody's racist. Somebody's ignorant. Someone's a misogynist. Someone's this. Someone's that. They'll engage in that. They'll say you were too stupid to understand how tariffs work. That's what they'll do. Watch. Do you think that Rand Paul fighting Trump will hurt him? I respect the man, but I'm fighting Trump and poorly in defending stance has lowered him. But him fighting Trump and poorly defending stance has lowered him in my eyes. Like Tom Massey, for instance, Rand Paul would be very difficult to beat. That being said, I do think that he is hurting himself. I think there are a lot of Republicans who are doing what they did in 17 through 20, or 21, kind of biding their time, waiting for the end of Trump. I would strongly suspect that Rand's doing that too. But at least with Rand, I do think that he's honest. You know what I'm saying, Emperor? Like, I don't think that Massey is always being earnest. I just don't. I think it's a shtick for him, and he does it, and that's his play. And it's working for him. So he's never gonna stop. But Rand, I really do think holds those beliefs. All right, it's 3:05. All right, we're over. Whatever. Don't forget, 5 o'clock, War Room. I'm going to join Jack, and I'll post it. But it's on Getter. It's on YouTube. I mean, it's on Getter. It's on Rumble. Rumble's probably the best place to watch. Or if you just want to plug in real quick, if you're watching on Getter, if you have Getter, you can just go right to it, go to the live, and you'll see War Room. You'll want to click on it there. And also, don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them and share them far and wide. The link to the advertisers for the week. I need to bring a read in. I did start already to put up another one, even though it's technically not their time yet, because I brought them up yesterday. Or was it yesterday? I brought them up during the Rumble thing, and it's actually very good. But I'll talk to you more about that next week. And of course, the real priority here is the Public Polling Project. Any of the links down there, either join locals or the Public Polling Project. Those are the 2. I should have front loaded them, by the way. Put the others down. I'm going to start doing that, in fact. I'm doing that. All right, don't forget to, I got a whole lot of don't forgets. There's a lot of stuff you guys got to remember. Nations and Identities, Vincent Pecora, 3 p.m. Eastern time. 3 p.m. Eastern time. I will put up the Zoom link information on YouTube and locals before that time for you guys to join. And hopefully, and it won't happen this weekend because Laura's not here. But yeah, last weekend, I guess she already made one. Then I made one, and the post had the wrong link in it, so I had to cancel one of them, and then it just messed everything up. But we did get there, and we were fine. But I mean, I made a mistake, and it was a pain. Yeah, that's 3, and that's for local supporters and YouTube members. And I'll do it both on the community section of YouTube, only for members, because there's like the link and the code and everything to get in there. It has to be. And then, of course, on locals, if you are a locals supporter, you can join the locals book club. Make sense? All right. With that in mind, I hope you guys all have a great weekend. Really looking forward to Easter. I'm going to miss church this week, which kind of stinks. Not kind of, it stinks. And I hope you don't. I hope you have a great weekend, a nice one, a pleasant one, a relaxing one. And I will see you all very soon. Don't forget, I'll see you on locals at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Book club, book club, book club. As Laura would say, deuces.